Part 1 Segment 1, Heathrow, 10:47 p.m. The fluorescent lights of Terminal 5 hummed like insects, constant, sterile, and inescapable. Emma Carter had learned to live beneath their white glare, the way some creatures learn to breathe underwater. She'd been here for 4 years now, trapped behind a check-in counter that smelled faintly of disinfectant and burned coffee, processing the endless stream of faces, voices, and anger that poured through Heathrow every day. "Next, please," she said, her voice automatic, thin as a photocopy of itself. The man in front of her slammed his passport onto the counter. His suit looked expensive, his expression didn't. "My flight was supposed to leave 30 minutes ago," he barked. "What are you people even doing? Playing cards back there?" Emma forced a professional smile. "I'm very sorry, sir. There's a delay due to weather over." "I don't give a damn about the weather," he cut in, voice rising. "I have a meeting in Zurich at 8 a.m. Do you know what that means?" "Of course you don't. People like you wouldn't understand. People like you. It was always people like you." "Meaning what?" "The underpaid, the overworked, the disposable." Emma nodded, her throat dry. "I'll see what I can do." But he was already grabbing his bag. "You're useless," he spat, then hurled the carry-on toward her feet. It missed by inches, striking the counter. The impact echoed across the terminal. Heads turned. A mother covered her child's ears. Emma's smile didn't break, she'd trained it not to. She bent down, retrieved the bag, and placed it carefully on the counter. "I'll rebook your flight," she said quietly. The man was already walking away, muttering something under his breath. Probably a slur. They always were. Behind her, one of the overhead lights flickered. It buzzed twice, then steadied. Emma felt the pulse of a headache behind her eyes. The shift wasn't even half over. By midnight, the terminal had emptied of everything except echoes and cleaners. The day staff had gone home hours ago. Emma remained, finishing reports she didn't care about, while the PA system cycled through its ghostly announcements, final calls for flights that had long since departed. Her co-worker, Sarah, slumped into the chair beside her. "Heard about what happened at Gate 32, she murmured. "The guy who threw his bag at you." Emma kept typing. "Yeah. Management says you need to file an incident report." "Of course they do." Sarah sighed. "They won't do anything, you know." "I know." For a while they sat in silence, the hum of distant vacuum cleaners filling the air. Sarah's reflection shimmered faintly in the glass wall beyond the counter. "Do you ever feel like we're rotting here?" she asked. Emma stopped typing. "Every day." Sarah gave a tired smile. "Well, at least the rot's consistent." She stood, stretched, and slung her bag over her shoulder. "See you tomorrow, Em." "Yeah. See you." When Sarah's footsteps faded, Emma was alone again. The vast terminal stretched before her like a cathedral, cold, indifferent, lit by the same merciless glow. She stared at the rows of empty check-in kiosks, each one blinking a polite blue welcome. The sight made her chest ache. She remembered when she first started, how proud she'd been to work here. Heathrow had felt like a gateway to the world, people flying to Tokyo, New York, Rome. Now it was just a revolving door of misery. Every smile fake. Every apology rehearsed. Every day a slow drowning. Her phone buzzed with a notification. At SkyMiles vlogger posted a new video, "Airport staff freaks out at me for no reason, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy." The thumbnail froze her blood. It was her, red-faced, mouth open mid-sentence, caught during yesterday's argument with a passenger who'd filmed her without consent. She clicked the video anyway, as if watching her own humiliation could somehow make it less real. The comments were worse than she expected. "She looks unhinged." Typical lazy airport staff. Fire her already. Emma closed the app. Her hands were trembling. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a low growl over London. The sound made the glass panes quiver. At 2:30 a.m., her supervisor called her into the back office to discuss professionalism. He didn't look up from his computer once during the lecture. His voice was smooth, indifferent, perfectly corporate. "We understand the stress you're under, Emma," he said. "But the company's reputation depends on consistent guest experience. Perhaps you should take a few personal days." "Unpaid, you mean?" "Of course," he said, still typing. "For reflection." Reflection. The word made her want to laugh. Or scream. When she walked out of the office, the thunder had grown louder. Rain streaked the glass in diagonal lines, turning the runway lights into smears of color. Somewhere, a plane took off into the storm, engines roaring. Emma watched it rise until it vanished into black clouds. She whispered to herself, "I wish I was on that plane." By 3 a.m., the last train had stopped running. Emma sat in her car in the staff parking lot, engine off, forehead resting on the steering wheel. The rain drummed against the windshield like impatient fingers. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked foreign, dark circles, hollow cheeks, eyes too tired to focus. She tried to remember the last time she'd felt anything resembling peace. Not happiness. Just peace. Maybe 4 years ago, when she'd first moved to London, convinced that this job would lead somewhere better. That version of Emma, hopeful, eager, felt like someone else entirely. Someone she'd buried under fluorescent light. Her phone buzzed again. Spam email. She was about to delete it when she noticed the subject line. Night shift position, Blackthorn Regional Airport. Curious, she opened it. The message was brief, written in simple font. Seeking night operations officer. Blackthorn Regional Airport, Scotland. Salary, £10,000 per month, paid cash. Housing included. Start immediately. For those who can work alone. She blinked. It had to be a scam. No small regional airport paid that much, especially for a night shift. And cash? That was absurd. Still, she clicked the attached link. The website was plain, almost old-fashioned, no images, just text on a grey background. At the bottom, a single line read, "If you can endure the dark, we'll pay you to keep it contained." She frowned. The phrase was strange, almost poetic. Keep it contained. Her tired mind conjured meanings. Maybe the dark was just a metaphor for loneliness or night work. But something about the phrasing lingered. Below it, a button, Apply now. Emma hesitated. She should delete the email, report it as phishing, go home, sleep. But instead, she clicked. A video window popped open. Static for a moment, then a man appeared, middle-aged, silver hair neatly combed, wearing a dark suit and tie. His name tag read Alistair McKenna. The background behind him was an office lined with aviation maps and an old clock that ticked audibly through the speakers. "Good evening," he said, his Scottish accent calm and clipped. "If you found this message, you've likely been looking for a way out." Emma froze. It wasn't a live call. Just a pre-recorded video. But it felt personal. At Blackthorn, Alistair continued, "We value solitude, discipline, and silence. The work is simple: maintain systems, monitor the grounds, and follow our rules. The pay is generous because few can endure the isolation. If you are not deterred by long nights and stranger things than sleep, we invite you to apply." The video ended. No form appeared, just a single email address. Emma stared at the screen, heartbeat loud in her ears. Stranger things than sleep. Was this some kind of art project? Or a prank? But £10,000. Even if it was half that, it was more than she'd ever earned. Enough to pay off debts, move out of her Showbarks flat, maybe start over. Outside, lightning flashed, bleaching the world white for an instant. Her reflection flickered across the screen, ghost-like. For a moment, she thought she saw someone standing behind her in the glass, just a trick of the light, she told herself, but the shape was gone when she turned. She typed a reply before she could talk herself out of it. To blackthornips@protonmail.com. Subject, Application, Night Shift Officer. Dear Mr. McKenna, I am interested in the position. I am available to start immediately. Regards. Emma Carter. Her finger hovered over send for a long time. The rain softened to a steady whisper. Then she pressed it. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a new message appeared almost instantly in her inbox. From Alistair McKenna. Subject, Welcome to Blackthorn. Friday. Midnight. Don't be late. The hum of the airport faded behind her as she started her car. The clock on the dashboard glowed 3:33 a.m. Her wipers swept away the rain in rhythmic arcs, and for the first time in years, she felt something stirring in her chest, something dangerously close to hope. Or maybe it was dread. Sometimes, she realized, they felt the same. As she drove home through the dark, she didn't notice the flickering reflection in her rearview mirror, the faint outline of a woman in a 1940s dress, sitting silently in the back seat. Segment 2, The Blackthorn Offer. The drive north took 12 hours, though to Emma it felt like she was slipping through a dream that refused to end. London had fallen away behind her, its steel and neon fading into the slow grey sprawl of the Midlands, then into emptiness. Fields gave way to forests. Towns dwindled into clusters of stone houses and quiet petrol stations, where the attendants spoke with accents thick as peat. By the time she reached the Scottish border, her phone had lost all signal. Only the GPS voice remained, tinny and mechanical. In 5 miles, turn left onto Blackthorn Road. Blackthorn Road didn't look like a road at all. It was a narrow stretch of cracked asphalt winding between pine forests, so dense the branches knit together overhead, blotting out the sky. Fog clung to the trees, and every now and then, Emma swore she saw shapes shifting just beyond her headlights, antlers, perhaps. Or not. Her little Ford hummed uneasily along the path, tires crunching over gravel. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. No birds. No wind. Just the hum of the engine and her own pulse. She checked the clock, 11:42 p.m. She was nearly there. Friday. Midnight. Don't be late. The sign appeared suddenly from the mist. Blackthorn Regional Airport. Painted in flaking white letters on a rusted metal board. Below it, someone had spray-painted an arrow that pointed toward a cluster of distant lights. Emma exhaled. Finally. The airport was smaller than she'd imagined. One runway stretched across the valley, barely visible through the fog. A single terminal sat at its edge, an old stone building with an attached tower that rose crookedly into the night. The design was strange, part Gothic, part utilitarian, as if someone had tried to modernize a church and given up halfway. Her headlights swept across the parking area. Empty. No other cars. For a moment, she wondered if she'd come to the wrong place. Then the front doors opened, and a man stepped out. Alistair McKenna looked exactly as he had in the video, immaculate suit, silver hair combed back, posture straight despite the late hour. In one hand he carried an umbrella, in the other, a leather folder. The fog parted slightly around him, as though even the mist respected his presence. "Miss Carter," he called, his voice cutting cleanly through the still air. "You're punctual." "Good." Emma climbed out of the car, clutching her jacket tighter. "Mr. McKenna." Thank you for. He raised a hand. Alistair is fine. Come inside before you freeze. His tone was courteous, but his eyes, grey, sharp, studied her with unsettling precision. Like a doctor examining a patient before diagnosis. Inside, the terminal was warmer but not by much. The faint smell of oil and old wood lingered beneath the hum of fluorescent lights. The interior looked frozen in time, scuffed check-in counters, faded posters of smiling passengers, a vending machine with prices in pounds, but designs from another decade. Only one computer glowed on the front desk, its screen filled with scrolling green text. Alistair led her toward a small office at the end of the hall. The door bore a brass plaque that read Manager A. McKenna. He gestured for her to sit. Coffee? No, thank you. Good choice, he said dryly. It's dreadful. He sat behind the desk, opened the leather folder, and removed a few papers. You've read the posting. Yes. Though there wasn't much detail. There never is, Alistair said, signing something with a fountain pen. Transparency, in our line of work, can be counterproductive. Emma frowned slightly. And what line of work is that, exactly? He looked up, smile faint but polite. Airport operations. Maintenance. Surveillance. You'll oversee the night shift alone. Blackthorn doesn't receive passenger traffic after 10 p.m., but our systems must be monitored at all times. That's it. Just monitoring. And following instructions precisely. The emphasis was quiet, but unmistakable. Alistair closed the folder and leaned back. Tell me, Miss Carter. Do you scare easily? The question caught her off guard. I suppose not. Why? Because you'll be alone here most nights. Isolation plays tricks on the mind. You'll hear things, perhaps see things. Blackthorn is an old place with older habits. Many have left because they could not tell the difference between malfunction and something else. Something else. His expression didn't change. You'll see. Or hopefully, you won't. Emma forced a small laugh, unsure whether he was joking. I can handle a few creaks and shadows. Good. Alistair opened a drawer and pulled out a laminated sheet, sliding it across the desk toward her. Then you'll want to memorize these. Blackthorn night operation rules. Keep all lights on. If any go out, leave that section immediately. Do not investigate. During storms, remain indoors. Avoid the women's restroom at all costs. If you see Abigail between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., do not speak. Communicate only with gestures. If you speak, run to the women's restroom and lock the door. The janitor arrives between 1 and 2 a.m. Ask his name. Only Finn is allowed entry. At 3 a.m., a blue-black plane may appear on the runway. Look once, no more. No matter what it says, do not respond. If armed personnel arrive before dawn, allow them to search, but never let them access the jet bridge. They cannot harm you if you refuse. Emma read the list twice. The words were absurd, like something out of a horror forum. Is this a joke? Alistair didn't smile. I assure you, it's not. These rules are the reason this airport still stands. She set the paper down carefully. Mr. McKenna, Alistair, I'm not sure I understand. You don't have to, he said, standing. You only have to obey. He walked to the window, gazing out at the fog. The runway lights flickered faintly through the mist, casting ghostly beams across the wet tarmac. Blackthorn is a crossing point, in a manner of speaking. Between what belongs here and what doesn't. Our job is to keep the border closed. Emma stared. Are you saying this place is haunted? Alistair turned to face her. Haunted is a comforting word. The truth is less forgiving. For a moment, the office felt colder. The lights above them buzzed once, dimmed, then returned to full brightness. He sighed. I don't expect you to believe me yet. None of them do at first. Them? He ignored the question. Training begins tonight. If you last a week, the first payment will be delivered cash, as promised. Fail to follow the rules, and no amount of money will matter. He reached into the drawer again, and handed her a key ring with 2 brass keys and a small flashlight. The top one opens the control room. The bottom, well, you'll find out. Emma swallowed. What happened to the last person who worked here? For the first time, Alistair's composure faltered. His eyes drifted toward the window again. They didn't follow the rules. At midnight, Alistair walked her through the terminal, his footsteps echoing sharply across the tile. The security cameras are motion-activated, he explained. You'll have access to the feeds from the control room upstairs. Power sometimes fluctuates, Blackthorn doesn't like storms. Emma glanced around. The building was eerily still, the silence so thick it seemed to absorb her breath. She caught her reflection in a glass door, small, pale, uncertain. Alistair noticed her hesitation. You can still turn back, you know. Few make it past their first night. Emma forced a smile. I've been yelled at by hundreds of people every day for 4 years. I'll take my chances with ghosts. That earned her the faintest curve of his mouth. Good answer. He led her to a narrow staircase that spiraled up to the control tower. The air grew colder as they climbed. At the top, the room opened into a panoramic view of the runway, a vast, empty stretch of blackness punctuated by flickering lights. Banks of monitors hummed quietly, displaying camera feeds from the perimeter and the main hall. A single chair sat in front of the console. This will be your post, Alistair said. Everything you need is here. Keep the lights on. Keep the doors locked. And remember the rules. He placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. His skin was cold. You'll do fine, Miss Carter. You have the right kind of exhaustion. Then he was gone, his footsteps descending the stairs, the echo fading until she was alone. Emma sat in the chair, staring at the monitors. Each camera showed a different slice of the airport, the lobby, the baggage area, the runway. Everything looked still, ordinary. And yet, in one feed, the far corridor near the women's restroom, she thought she saw movement. A flicker, like a dress hem vanishing around a corner. She blinked, leaned closer. Nothing. Just the hum of the screens and the whisper of the fog pressing against the glass. Midnight had passed. The night at Blackthorn had begun. Segment 3, the first night at Blackthorn. The first hour passed in silence. Emma sat in the control room, the dim glow of the monitors painting her skin in shifting blue light. Each feed flickered slightly, as though the cameras were breathing. She tried to distract herself, checked the temperature gauge, the power readings, the weather feed, but everything displayed the same message. Signal weak, local interference detected. Her coffee had gone cold. The air tasted faintly metallic, like blood in the mouth after biting your tongue. Outside, the fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had grown thicker, pressing against the tower's windows like something alive. The runway lights pulsed weakly through the haze, tiny islands in a sea of dark. Emma glanced at the laminated rules pinned beside her console. Rule 1, keep all lights on. She checked the overhead fluorescents. Still humming. Still steady. So far, so good. By 1:12 a.m., her eyelids had grown heavy. The monitors blurred slightly when she blinked, and the low hum of the electronics began to sound almost like whispering, soft, rhythmic, nearly human. She rubbed her temples. Get a grip, Em. Then something on camera 3 moved. At first, she thought it was static, just a glitch in the feed showing the corridor near the baggage claim. But then the shape flickered again. A dark outline, faintly human, drifting along the edge of the frame. She leaned closer. "Hello." Her voice startled her. It sounded too loud in the small room. The shape paused, as if it had heard her. Then the feed cut to black. She waited for it to return, staring at the no signal message as seconds stretched into minutes. When it finally flickered back, the corridor was empty again. Emma exhaled slowly. "Old cameras," she muttered. "Glitchy wiring. Nothing else." Still, her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her notebook. She wrote, 1:15 a.m. movement near baggage area. Possibly equipment interference. Her handwriting looked smaller than usual, like someone else's. By 1:43 a.m., she heard footsteps. Not from below, but above her, light, deliberate taps, as though someone were walking on the roof. The pattern was steady: 3 steps, pause. 3 steps, pause. Emma froze. The tower's roof wasn't accessible from inside. She turned the volume up on the surveillance microphones. Nothing. Just static. The steps continued for another minute, then stopped completely. When she finally forced herself to breathe again, she noticed her reflection in the glass, pale, eyes wide. The faint shimmer of fog behind her looked almost like a face. Almost. She decided to take a walk. The stairs creaked under her feet as she descended, the sound echoing too loudly in the empty terminal. The air below was colder, damp, like a basement after rain. Most of the overhead lights were still on, buzzing faintly. But down the main corridor, one bulb flickered violently. It was right above the entrance to the women's restroom. Rule 2: avoid the women's restroom during storms. It wasn't storming. Not yet. Still, something about the way that single light stuttered made her hesitate. She turned toward the vending machine instead. Coins clattered into the slot, the sound echoing across the hall. The machine groaned, then dropped a can of soda with a hollow metallic clunk. When she turned back toward the corridor, the flickering bulb had stopped. The hallway was dark now. Completely. Emma swallowed hard, took a cautious step forward. "Hello. Alistair." Her voice bounced down the empty hall. No reply. She fumbled for her flashlight and switched it on. The beam cut through the dark, landing on the restroom door. The sign's white paint had peeled away in long curls, exposing rust underneath. For a moment, she thought she saw something just beneath the door, a shadow, too dark to belong to her. Then a sound drifted out. Not footsteps. Not movement. Humming. A low, tuneless hum, like someone absent-mindedly singing to themselves. Her breath caught. She stepped back instinctively. The flashlight trembled in her hand. The humming stopped. A soft voice, impossibly close, whispered, "You're not Finn." The flashlight went out. Emma dropped it, heart pounding, and stumbled backward toward the main hall. The light flickered once overhead, twice, then came back on. The corridor was empty. The restroom door stood half open, swinging slightly, as if moved by a breeze. But there was no breeze. She ran back up the stairs, almost tripping on the final step. In the control room, the monitors flared to life again, each feed showing perfectly normal images. The baggage claim. The lobby. The empty hallway. Except one. Camera 5, near the entrance. A figure stood just inside the main doors, motionless. Emma froze. It was a woman, or seemed to be. Her outline was blurred by the fog seeping through the glass. She wore something long, white, that clung to her shape as though soaked through. Emma leaned closer to the screen. "Abigail." The figure turned her head. The feed cut to black. The silence that followed felt heavier than sound. Emma sat there for several minutes, unable to move. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to grab her keys, drive until the fog was a memory. But she remembered Alistair's words, "You can still turn back, you know." No. She needed this job. She needed the money. She took a deep breath, picked up the flashlight, and forced herself to look again. The monitors showed nothing unusual. No woman. No movement. But as she leaned back, she caught something new in the reflection of the glass, faint words scrawled across the surface in condensation, as if written by a fingertip from the other side. "Ask his name." She blinked. When she looked again, the words were gone. At 2 a.m., the door downstairs creaked open. Emma checked the monitor. A man in a janitor's uniform entered, carrying a mop and a bucket. Her pulse jumped. The rule echoed in her mind. The janitor arrives between 1 and 2 a.m. Ask his name. Only Finn is allowed entry. She pressed the intercom button. "Who's there?" The man looked up toward the camera, and smiled faintly. His teeth gleamed too white in the dim light. "Evening," he said, voice calm, Scottish accent thick. "Just me." "Finn." Emma's hand hovered over the microphone switch. "Say again." "Finn," he repeated, still smiling. "You're new." She hesitated. Something in his tone was off, too precise, too rehearsed, like he was reciting from memory. "Right," she said. "Carry on." He nodded once and disappeared into the corridor. For the next 20 minutes, the feeds showed him moving slowly through the terminal, mopping. Always facing away from the camera. Never once turning his back fully to her. At 2:23, he wheeled his bucket out of view, and did not reappear. Emma scanned every camera. Nothing. But faintly, from somewhere near the restroom, she heard the humming again. By the time the clock struck 3 o'clock, the airport had fallen into complete stillness. Her eyes burned from watching the screens. Her coffee sat untouched. Then, from the corner of the runway feed, a shape appeared, faint and blue-black, materializing from the fog. A plane. Her pulse raced. She remembered Rule 5. At 3 a.m., a blue-black plane may appear on the runway. Look once, no more. She forced herself to glance only once. It was there, a small jet, its windows dark, the fuselage glimmering faintly like oil under light. The radio beside her crackled. A voice whispered through the static, low, male, pleading. "Control, this is Flight 07. Requesting clearance. Please, let us in." Emma's hand hovered over the MIC switch. Her instincts screamed, "Don't answer." The radio hissed louder. "Please. They are outside. They are not supposed to." The transmission cut. The monitors flickered again. The plane was gone. Only the fog remained. When dawn finally bled pale grey into the sky, Emma was still awake, staring blankly at the monitors. The building felt quieter now. Almost relieved. At 6:02 a.m., she heard the front doors open. Alistair McKenna entered, coat immaculate, eyes sharp as ever. "You lasted the night," he said. "Most don't." Emma's voice trembled. There was someone. A woman. And the janitor. Alistair raised a hand. "No need to explain. You followed the rules. That's what matters." He handed her an envelope, thick, sealed, heavy. "Payment for your first night. Go home. Rest. You'll be back tomorrow, yes?" Emma stared at him. "Are you serious? After what happened?" Alistair's smile was polite, distant. "Yes, Miss Carter. Especially after what happened." Outside, the fog began to thin. But as she stepped toward her car, she noticed something dark under the front tire, a damp footprint, small and bare. And another beside it. Then a trail leading back toward the terminal doors. Segment 4, Abigail Speaks. The terminal was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights, that sterile, high-pitched drone that seemed to burrow under Emma's skin. She sat behind the check-in counter, staring at the flickering monitor, as it looped the same welcome screen again and again. Blackthorn Regional Airport, serving the Highlands since 1963. The slogan felt like a lie. This place didn't serve anyone. It swallowed them. Her eyes darted to the laminated sheet pinned beside her. The 6 rules. The words looked almost childish, printed in bold Arial, like something a substitute teacher might hand out before losing control of a classroom. Keep all lights on. If there's a storm, stay inside. Avoid the women's restroom. Abigail appears between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Do not speak to her. Communicate only with gestures. If you slip, run. The janitor comes from 1 to 2 a.m. Ask his name. Only let Finn in. The blue-black plane will land at 3 a.m. Do not look twice. The task force may arrive before dawn. Do not let them enter the bridge. She read them again, lips moving silently, as though repetition might turn them into something logical. But every line was absurd. It was 10:56 p.m. The clock ticked softly, like a heartbeat muffled by walls. Emma rubbed her temples. Maybe the fatigue was making her hallucinate, the constant hum, the way shadows seemed to stretch a little too long. The security cameras on the wall blinked in lazy rotation, but their feed displayed nothing. Just empty corridors. Empty waiting areas. The dark, endless tarmac. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. It began with a reflection. Out of the corner of her eye, the glass panel near the departures gate rippled, as though someone had exhaled softly against it. Emma turned, heart thudding, but there was nothing. Just her own faint reflection. Her pale face. The cheap blue uniform. Then, a sound. Click. The faint, unmistakable roll of wheels on tile. Her breath caught. She looked toward the main entrance. There, at the far end of the terminal, a woman was walking in. Elegant. Poised. Pulling 2 suitcases that gleamed like polished obsidian. Emma blinked once. The woman smiled. Something about her was off. Her dress, a long, cream-colored gown straight from another era, shimmered faintly, though the air around her was dead still. Her lipstick was deep red, too perfect, too precise. Her hair styled in waves that hadn't been fashionable in decades. 1940s, Emma thought automatically, recalling old Heathrow posters. She swallowed hard. Abigail, she whispered before she could stop herself. The woman's head tilted sharply, a motion too fast, too mechanical to be natural. Then, the smile widened. Emma froze. Her mind screamed, "Don't talk to her." But the human instinct to be polite kicked in, that ingrained British reflex to maintain civility even in madness. She almost said hello. Almost. Instead, she raised a hand in a stiff wave. The woman stopped halfway down the terminal. Her heels didn't make a sound, though they should have echoed. The silence pressed harder, like the air had thickened. Abigail, if that's who it was, lifted one hand and waved back, the motion delicate, graceful. Then she pointed toward the boarding gate. Emma glanced that way. The gate door was locked, its metal latch gleaming under the lights. She turned back. Abigail was closer now. 10 meters. Then 6. "Sorry, you can't," Emma began, then caught herself, slapping her hand over her mouth. Abigail's smile froze. The temperature dropped. A faint crack echoed as one of the overhead lights burst, scattering glass onto the floor. The rest began to flicker, not in rhythm, but erratically, like a panicked heartbeat. Emma stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her chair. "I didn't mean," she whispered, then stopped again. "You're still speaking." The air around Abigail shimmered. Her image stuttered, like bad video feed. When she moved again, her eyes were black. Not shadowed, black, as though ink had filled them completely. The suitcase handles bent under invisible pressure. "Run!" Her mind screamed at this time. She bolted, sprinting past the security gate, shoes slapping the linoleum. The restroom sign glowed faintly at the end of the corridor, "Women." Behind her, something heavy dragged across the floor. The sound of suitcases. But louder. Wet. Grinding. She reached the restroom, shoved the door open, and slammed it shut behind her. The lock clicked. Silence. Her breath rasped, echoing against the tiles. The lights inside were dimmer, the air thick with the smell of disinfectant. She backed against the far wall, trying not to make a sound. Outside, something tapped against the door. 3 times. Tap. 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 Then came the voice, low, soft, feminine. "Emma." Her name stretched, warped, as though someone were trying to pronounce it through water. "Emma, dear, you forgot to check my luggage." Emma pressed her palms against her ears. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might vomit. "Don't answer," she whispered to herself. "Don't answer, don't." "So rude," the voice murmured, almost playfully. "Is that how they trained you at Heathrow?" Her legs trembled. She wanted to scream, but her throat refused. A shadow passed under the door, long, narrow, with edges that didn't make sense. It wasn't just a person's shadow, it seemed to bend upward, as if standing against the door itself. Then, a sharp knock. Louder. Bang. The entire frame shuddered. Dust fell from the hinges. "Emma," the voice said again, no longer playful. "You spoke to me." Her mind spiraled. The rules. If you slip, run into the women's restroom and lock the door. She'd done that. So why didn't it stop? She pressed her forehead to her knees, whispering numbers. 100, 99, 98. It didn't stop. The banging grew faster, more erratic. The light above her flickered violently, white, then blue, then darkness. For a second, she thought she saw something in the mirror, behind her, a figure standing where no one could stand. But before she could turn, the light died completely. And in that perfect, suffocating dark, the voice spoke right beside her ear. "Count slower, Emma." She screamed. Then everything went still. The light returned. The door was intact. Silence. Her own reflection stared back from the mirror, pale, shaking, eyes wide. When the clock on her phone flicked to 1:02 a.m., a faint knock came again. But this time, it was gentler. Rhythmic. "Miss Carter," a man's voice called, muffled but calm. "It's Finn. You can come out now." Emma stayed frozen for another minute before daring to unlock the door. When she stepped into the corridor, the terminal looked normal. Clean. Bright. No broken lights. No suitcases. Just Finn, standing near the check-in desk, holding a mop. He smiled faintly. "You made it through your first test," he said softly. Emma stared at him. That was real, wasn't it? Finn's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Depends on what you mean by real." He handed her a bottle of water. "Drink," he said. "You'll need it. It gets worse before dawn." Part 2 Segment 1, The Keeper's Rules. The first light of dawn spilled through the terminal windows, pale and cold. It illuminated everything in a washed-out, sickly glow, the empty chairs, the coffee-stained counter, the faint scuff marks where something heavy had dragged across the tiles. Emma sat motionless behind the check-in desk, still gripping the bottle of water Finn had given her. Her knuckles were white, her hair a tangled halo around her face. Every sound, the hum of the vending machine, the distant chirp of a morning bird, made her flinch. It's over, she told herself. It's daylight. Daylight means normal. The door to the arrivals hall creaked open. "Miss Carter," said a voice low, calm, cultured, and utterly out of place in this rotting terminal. Alistair stepped inside. His long coat was buttoned neatly despite the chill. A thin layer of fog clung to him, as though the mist outside had followed him in. His silver hair was immaculate, his expression unreadable. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing one in front of her. "Black? No sugar." Emma blinked up at him. Her lips trembled, but she managed to croak, "What the hell was that?" Alistair's eyes flicked toward the far end of the terminal, toward the spot where Abigail had stood hours ago. "I told you," he said quietly. "The rules are not arbitrary." "That," she stammered. "That thing," she said, "my name." She touched the door. "Then you're lucky you're still here." His tone was gentle, but final, like a doctor delivering bad news. "Abigail doesn't forgive curiosity." Emma stared at him, heart pounding. "You knew this would happen. You sent me in there knowing that thing was real. I needed to see if you'd survive the first night." He said it plainly, without malice, as if it were a job assessment, nothing more. Her voice rose. "You tested me." Alistair didn't answer right away. Instead, he set his coffee down, pulled a small brass key from his pocket, and unlocked the office door behind him. "Come," he said. "You'll want to sit for this." Emma hesitated. The office lights buzzed faintly, flickering once before stabilizing. A large map of the Scottish Highlands hung on the wall, dotted with tiny red pins. The word Blackthorn was circled 3 times in thick marker. Saturday. Alistair remained standing, hands behind his back. "There are things in this world," he began, "that refuse to die. Accidents, grief, violence, they leave stains. Most places fade. But some absorb." He tapped the map lightly with a finger. "Blackthorn sits on one of those places. A fault line. A junction where our world thins." Emma's throat felt dry. "You mean, like a haunting?" "If that word helps," he said. "But ghosts imply memory. These are older. Hungrier." Her stomach churned. She glanced at the laminated rules folded in her pocket. "And Abigail, what is she?" Alistair's jaw tightened. "Once, she was human. During the war, Blackthorn was used as a transit hub. A plane crashed nearby, no survivors. Except her, or so the records said. She returned weeks later, walking barefoot through the snow. Didn't speak a word. She worked here for years afterward. They said she never aged. Never left. When the airport shut down in the 70s, they found her body in the hangar, sitting upright, perfectly preserved." Emma shivered. "You're saying she still exists?" he interrupted. "Yes. Abigail appears to each new keeper. She tests obedience. Defiance feeds her." He turned away, staring out through the blinds toward the fog-wrapped runway. "You must understand, Miss Carter, this place isn't cursed, it's contained. The rules are what keep it sealed. And you're what, some kind of caretaker." His reflection in the glass didn't move when he did. "Once," he said softly. "I kept the rules for 5 years. I thought I understood them. I didn't." He faced her again. For the first time, she saw something in his eyes, exhaustion so deep it looked carved into him. The job isn't about guarding planes, he said. It's about keeping them from crossing over. Emma frowned. Them? He didn't answer. Instead, he opened a drawer and slid something across the desk, an old leather-bound logbook, edges frayed, pages yellowed. Its cover was stamped with a faded insignia, Civil Aviation Authority Restricted. She hesitated before touching it. The leather was cold, unnaturally so. Each keeper records what happens during their shift, Alistair said. Patterns. Deviations. Names that appear. Times when the rules change. Her eyes widened. Change. You mean they're not fixed? Not always, he said. Sometimes the order shifts. Sometimes a seventh rule appears. You'll know when it does. Emma stared at him in disbelief. This is insane. You expect me to stay here after last night? He smiled faintly, almost pitying. You could go, if you like. Drive south. Return to Heathrow. But you've seen Abigail now. She knows you. Leaving won't change that. The words sank like stones in her chest. What do you mean? Blackthorn doesn't let go easily. His tone softened. You're already tethered. Emma pushed back from the chair, shaking her head. No. No, I didn't agree to, whatever this is. I just wanted a job. I wanted peace. Alistair's gaze sharpened. And you'll have it, if you learn the rules. They are the only thing keeping you alive. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. There's something you need to understand about the rules, Miss Carter. They aren't laws. They are bargains. Her breath hitched. Bargains with what? He didn't answer. Instead, he opened the logbook to a page filled with spidery handwriting, dates, coordinates, and strange phrases scrawled in red ink. She caught one line before he turned the page. Rule 5 shifted. Plane arrived early. Spoke my name before dawn. She felt cold all over. Alistair sighed and closed the book. You'll learn soon enough. For now, rest. Tonight we'll test you again. He stood, reaching for his coat. Finn will brief you before your next shift. He's been through it. Wait. Her voice trembled. How long have you been doing this? Too long, he said simply. Long enough to know that the longer you stay, the more the rules start to sound like prayers. He moved toward the door, but stopped halfway, glancing back. One more thing. If the lights go out, all of them, don't run this time. Sit still. Close your eyes. And whatever you do. He paused, his voice almost a whisper. Don't look at the glass. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence returned. Emma sat alone, staring at the coffee gone cold in her hands. Through the window, the fog thickened again, curling against the glass like fingers. Somewhere beyond it, a low, distant sound echoed, not thunder, not wind. Something else. Something waiting for nightfall. Segment 2, The Woman in the Fog. By the time dusk settled, the fog had already begun to crawl in from the hills, a thick, grey tide swallowing the tarmac inch by inch. From the control room, Emma could barely see the runway lights anymore. The world outside the glass was fading. She checked the clock. 8:47 p.m. Her shift began 13 minutes ago. The laminated sheet of rules sat beside the radio, edges curling from overuse. She'd read it twice already, then a third time, as if repetition might carve sense into the madness. But tonight, something felt different. The text shimmered faintly under the lamp, not bright enough to notice at first, more like the page was breathing. She blinked hard, and it stilled. Fatigue, she told herself. That's all. Finn had left early. Said he had to check the perimeter lights. He didn't offer details, didn't meet her eyes when he said it. She'd watched his figure vanish into the mist and hadn't seen him since. Now, only the terminal remained, hollow, humming, alive with its own silence. The PA system crackled once. A brief, soft hiss. Then nothing. Emma glanced up at the speaker. "Finn," she said. Her voice sounded too loud in the empty space. She waited, but there was no reply. She turned back to her notebook, trying to steady her hands. Alistair's logbook lay open beside her, the leather stiff and cold. Her entry from last night stared back. 2:13, female voice outside window. 3 o'clock, door rattled. No entry. 3:47, silence. Air pressure drop. Survived. The word survived felt childish now. Arrogant. She added a new line beneath it. 2050, fog too thick. Can't see tower lights. The pen trembled slightly as she wrote. A dull thud came from somewhere near the main doors. She froze. Another thud. Then a long, dragging sound, like cloth or skin scraping concrete. Her heart began to hammer. She checked the first rule again. 1. The terminal doors must remain locked after sundown. She rose slowly, her shoes whispering against the floor. The fog outside pressed against the glass like wet breath, dense and impenetrable. Nothing moved, but the sound continued, faint, rhythmic, deliberate. She forced herself toward the doors, each step heavier than the last. "Hello," she called. "Finn, is that you?" Only the fog answered, swirling lazily, curling in patterns like smoke from a dying candle. And then she saw it. A faint outline. A figure standing just beyond the glass. Too tall. Too still. Emma's breath hitched. The figure didn't move, didn't shift weight, didn't breathe. The fog rolled around it, but it remained sharply outlined, as if the mist refused to touch it. Her hand hovered near the door latch. She remembered Alistair's warning, "Don't look at the glass," and forced herself to turn away. But her reflection lingered there longer than she did. Her reflected face stared back even after she stepped aside. And then, it smiled. Emma stumbled backward, choking on air. The reflection blinked wrong, not closing but stretching, as if the lids folded inward. She turned off the lights. Darkness swallowed the terminal. The reflection vanished. So did the figure outside. Only the distant hum of the vending machine filled the silence now. She stood there in the dark, shaking, listening. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Then, another sound. Not from outside this time. From the intercom. A faint whisper threaded through the static, female, soft, almost melodic. "Emma." Her name, drawn out like a sigh. Her skin went cold. "Who is this?" she demanded, voice cracking. "Finn." "Stop it." The whisper continued, rhythmic now, almost like it was mimicking her breath. Then a phrase, so faint she almost didn't catch it. "You left the door open." Her eyes darted to the entrance. The latch glinted under the emergency light. It was open. Just slightly, a hairline crack. Emma bolted for it, slamming it shut, twisting the deadbolt until it clicked. She pressed her back against the door, trembling. "I locked it. I know I locked it." She didn't hear the intercom again, but she could feel something listening. She went back to the control room and sat under the single desk lamp. Every shadow seemed to breathe with her. The fog outside glowed faintly, pale and colorless, like bone dust suspended in air. Another look at the rules. Another breath. Then, she noticed it. There were 7 now. A new one had appeared at the bottom of the list. 7. Do not answer when she knocks. Her stomach dropped. Her pulse roared in her ears. She grabbed the paper with both hands, it felt wet, like it had been sitting in condensation, and reread the words. They didn't fade. Then came the first knock. 3 sharp raps against the door. Measured. Calm. Human. Emma froze. Another 3 knocks. Then silence. She clamped both hands over her mouth, afraid her breathing would give her away. Don't answer. She repeated it in her mind until it became rhythm, a mantra. The knocks stopped. But then, through the fogged glass, a faint silhouette appeared again, closer this time. Not tall anymore. Smaller. A woman's frame. Hair long. Head tilted. She leaned forward slowly, almost tenderly, until her forehead rested against the glass. The fog pulsed around her like breath. Emma turned away, squeezing her eyes shut. Please go, she whispered. No reply. Just a faint sound, like nails tracing the glass. And then, softly, through the intercom. He told you not to look. Emma's eyes snapped open. The voice wasn't outside now. It was inside. She spun toward the reflection in the office window, her own face, pale, eyes wide. But behind her reflection stood another. A woman, faint and grey, smiling. Her lips barely moved, but the voice was hers. You shouldn't have seen me. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then everything went black. For a long, trembling moment, Emma could only hear her heartbeat. And then, just as suddenly, the lights returned. The window was empty again. The fog had thinned. The door was still locked. The paper with the rules lay flat on the desk. 6 rules again. No 7th. Her hands shook so violently she dropped the pen. It rolled across the floor, stopping against the heel of her boot. The terminal hummed softly, pretending nothing had happened. She picked up the logbook and scrawled her entry. 2217, saw figure in fog. Heard voice. Rule changed. Then reverted. Rule 7, do not answer when she knocks. I didn't. She hesitated. Then added one more line. But she knew I wanted to. Segment 3, the static between worlds. The noise was already there when Emma opened her eyes. Not sound, not really, something in between. A low, sifting hum that rose and fell like breath trapped inside the walls. It filled the control room in thin, invisible waves, crackling in the radio's speakers, seeping through the glass, vibrating faintly in the metal frame of the desk. She thought she was dreaming again. The same corridor from Heathrow, the same fluorescent glare. Except when she blinked, the walls were too close. The air too heavy. The clock on the far wall ticked, and every second sounded wrong, half a beat off, like the rhythm of a heart skipping in panic. Emma sat up. The radio was on. She was sure she had turned it off before her shift ended last night. Blackthorn operations, she said automatically, voice rough from exhaustion. Who's transmitting? Static answered. It wasn't white noise anymore, it pulsed, a deep, slow throb that made her teeth ache. She reached for the dial. The moment her fingers brushed the metal, the hum sharpened into words. MMA. Emma froze. The syllable was faint but unmistakable. A whisper shaped like her name, threaded through the static like a vein. She swallowed hard. Finn. Is that you? The radio hissed. You hear it too. The voice was hers. Not similar, hers exactly. Same pitch, same timbre, even the slight tremor she heard when she spoke into recordings. It was as if someone had copied her voice, pressed it into a tape, and was playing it back from somewhere beyond the signal. She jerked her hand away, heart racing. The lights overhead flickered once, twice, then steadied. The clock on the wall reset to 12 o'clock. Midnight again. Emma glanced at her watch, 3:17 a.m. She tapped the face, as if that would change anything. The radio hissed louder. Beneath the noise, she thought she heard breathing. "You shouldn't have stayed," the voice said softly. Emma backed away. The chair wheels squeaked against the tile. She looked toward the glass wall of the control tower, where the runway was barely visible through the fog. There, at the edge of vision, a flicker. A shape standing where no one should be. She blinked, and it was gone. "Alistair," she whispered, fumbling for the phone. "If this is some kind of test." The receiver clicked before she could finish. "Emma." It was her voice again, but closer now. Not from the radio. From the intercom speaker above her head. Her throat tightened. "Stop it," she said, barely audible. "Stop what?" The intercom repeated it in perfect sync, a fraction of a second behind, as though the room itself were mocking her. She unplugged the radio, yanked the power cord from the wall. The static didn't stop. It shifted. The hum grew low and resonant, vibrating through her chest cavity, making her ribs ache. She stumbled toward the window, pressing her palms against the cool glass, searching for a reference point, a vehicle, a lamppost, anything real. But the fog had thickened until the world beyond the runway looked erased. Her reflection stared back, pale, wide-eyed, breathing fast. Behind her reflection, something else moved. A shadow, impossibly tall, crossing the room in silence. She spun around. Nothing there. But the shadow lingered on the glass, just behind her reflection's shoulder. Emma's breath hitched. "Finn," she called again. Her voice cracked. No answer. The static surged. The air tasted metallic, like a coin on her tongue. She turned back to the desk, to the laminated paper Alistair had left her, the 6 rules of the night shift. Her eyes darted over the list, she'd memorized them, but now the letters looked wrong. Bent. Mismatched. Rule 3, about Abigail, had changed. Instead of "do not speak to her," it now read, "Do not answer when you hear your own voice." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The lights dimmed, washing the room in the grey-blue of pre-storm twilight. The hum deepened again. She grabbed the rule sheet and stumbled backward until her heel struck the base of the console. She sank to the floor, pressing her palms to her ears. The sound didn't stop. It was inside her ears now, vibrating through bone. "Emma. Emma, look. Emma, come outside." Each voice layered over the next, building into a chorus of herself, pleading, laughing, whispering. Her vision wavered. The air thickened. For a moment she swore the walls were breathing. She looked down at her reflection in the dark screen of the control panel. It blinked at her. Her stomach dropped. She slapped the screen, heart hammering, but the reflection moved again, smiling faintly, as if amused. The static grew teeth. Words folded backward, syllables twisting into sounds that didn't belong to any language. Then, through the noise, a faint transmission. "Blackthorn Control, this is Flight 907 requesting." Emma's head snapped up. "Repeat that." "Say again." Silence. Then the same line, perfectly identical, down to the breath between words. "Blackthorn Control, this is Flight 907 requesting." The same voice, looping. Each repetition grew fainter, as if the transmission were moving away, into a distance not measured in miles, but in something stranger. Her hands shook. She stared at the empty runway. No plane. The static shifted one last time. Through it, something vast breathed, a sound too low, too deep to be natural. The windows trembled. She felt pressure behind her eyes, like the world leaning too close. And then, beneath the roar, a whisper, hers again. They hear us now. The lights blew out. Darkness swallowed the control room. The only illumination came from the radio's tiny LED, pulsing red, steady as a heartbeat. Emma crouched, shaking, gripping the floor. Somewhere beyond the walls, the static rolled and receded, like an ocean drawing breath. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the clock read 12 o'clock again. Her phone buzzed once, a text from an unknown number. Do not turn off the radio. It's listening. The message disappeared before she could blink. The hum subsided to a near silence. Only then did she realize the rule sheet was gone. In its place lay a new one, still laminated, fresh ink glistening. Rule 7: When the static speaks your name, it's already too late to hide. Part 3 Segment 1, The Black Horizon. The radio never went silent that night. Its red light kept pulsing long after Emma stopped looking at it. The hum had settled into something almost rhythmic, like waves against glass, but every so often it stuttered, and the air itself seemed to flinch. By dawn, the fog outside had thickened to a pale wall. The runway lights had vanished completely. No sunrise. No horizon. Emma stood by the window, still clutching the radio's microphone. Her voice sounded too small when she spoke into it. Blackthorn Tower to any ground crew, respond. Nothing. Only the low breath of static. Then, a tone, one clean note, clear and cold, that didn't belong on any frequency she knew. It hung in the air for 3 seconds and faded. When she turned away from the window, the reflection behind her lagged, moving a half-second slower. Her stomach tightened. She blinked hard, but the reflection didn't correct itself. It stayed there, slightly delayed, slightly smiling. Emma took a step closer to the glass. The reflected version tilted her head the wrong way, then raised a finger to her lips. The hum from the radio deepened into a sub-bass vibration that shook the consoles. The fog outside stirred. Something vast shifted within it, shapes, outlines, as though the clouds were folding around a colossal presence. A sound like strained metal bled through the mist. Emma backed toward the door. No, no, no. The door wouldn't open. The emergency latch clicked uselessly. The keypad display read Lockdown Protocol, Phase 7, a mode she had never seen before. Her headset crackled alive. Emma, said a voice, male, strained, breathing fast. Don't look outside. Whatever you do, don't. The voice broke into static. Then another voice, hers again, finished the sentence. Don't blink. The glass darkened. Not fog this time, shadows. Thousands of them, threading through the mist, twisting in slow spirals like strands of smoke drawn toward a drain. In the center of it, a circle opened, perfectly black, perfectly still. The hum vanished. The silence that replaced it was total, thick enough to feel. Every monitor in the control room flickered on by itself, one after another, showing the same feed, the runway from above, swallowed by the widening circle. The circle pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat. Then the lights in the tower dimmed. Emma could see movement inside the black, shapes like wings, or fractures in light. It wasn't empty, it was full of something. She pressed her hands to the glass and whispered, "What are you?" The fog closest to the tower peeled back, revealing the shape beneath. A structure, or a body, impossible to name. Blackthorn Tower itself reflected in its surface, only inverted. Every light burned where a shadow should be, every window an open wound of white glare. Her reflection stared back not from glass, but from inside that thing. "Emma," it whispered. "We are already there." She stumbled away, knocking over a chair. The tower lights flickered and then every bulb burst with a sound like brittle ice cracking. Red emergency lights flooded the room. The hum returned, faster now, pitched high, carrying something like a rhythm, a pattern of 3 rising notes followed by a pause. Times. Morse code. Emma grabbed a notepad and scribbled as it repeated. Her hand trembled. OPENTHEGATE. She stared at the words. No, she whispered. No gate. The monitors responded. Each screen split, showing multiple angles of her own control room, looping seconds apart, layers of the same moment bleeding together. In one of the loops, she saw herself standing at the window again. In another, she was gone. The static folded into a new voice. Deep. Distant. Like a storm speaking through miles of wire. You were chosen because you listen. Emma's knees gave out. The floor vibrated with every syllable, as if the words were weight. We speak through the noise you call the sky. You build towers to reach us, and you call them safe. The fog outside pressed against the glass until it bulged inward, bending like thin metal. Emma crawled toward the radio, fingers shaking. This is Blackthorn Control requesting immediate evac. No one is coming. Her own voice again. Calm. Resigned. She turned. The other Emma stood by the far console, same face, same uniform, eyes completely black, reflecting the red emergency lights like mirrors. Don't fight it, the other said softly. It's only the transmission finishing itself. Emma backed against the desk. What transmission? The double tilted her head. The one you started when you stayed. The floor trembled. Glass cracked. Outside, the black circle expanded until it touched the base of the tower. The fog spiraled inward like water down a drain. Emma's ears rang. The hum became a roar. Then, silence again. Everything stopped moving. Through the window, she could see the edge of the circle now directly beneath the tower, smooth, endless, reflecting nothing. Above it, the sky had vanished. There was only a vertical stretch of darkness that seemed to pull at the world. Her double raised a hand toward the window. Do you hear it yet? Emma listened. Beneath the silence, something vast breathing. A depth that had no bottom. A faint whisper brushed her ear, almost kind. Blackthorn isn't a place. It's a door. The double stepped backward and dissolved into static, scattering like ash. Every screen went black. Then, from the radio, her own recorded voice, from hours ago. Blackthorn operations, who's transmitting? The signal looped, perfectly clear. Emma's eyes filled with tears she couldn't feel. The air around her shimmered faintly, like heat haze, as if reality itself were thinning. Outside, the black circle pulsed one final time, slow, deliberate, and the tower lights died. Darkness fell again. But this time it wasn't the absence of light. It was presence, alive, watching. And then, from within that living dark, a single tone began to rise. Low, resonant, infinite. The sound of a world listening back. Segment 2, through the frequency. The silence didn't come all at once. It leaked in, like water through cracks in glass, soft, uncertain, until she realized the hum of the terminal lights was gone. The storm outside had stopped mid-roar. The rain froze mid-air, every droplet suspended like glass beads in a photograph. Emma's breathing was suddenly the loudest sound in the universe. Her reflection in the terminal window no longer matched her. When she tilted her head, it lagged behind, a half-second delay, as if her image existed on a different channel. Then, faintly, under the stillness, came the static. At first, it was just the whisper of interference, like an untuned radio behind a wall. Then it rose, curling into frequencies that her ears could feel more than hear, bzzcrrnnn. Each pulse dragged across her skull. The air shimmered. She clutched the counter. Alistair, she whispered, half hoping he'd answer through the intercom. But the radio only hissed in reply, the same sound, layered and breathing. Then, within that static, something shifted. Words. Emma. She froze. The syllables weren't spoken, they were suggested. Formed out of the noise. Emma, you're late. Her pulse spiked. The voice was faintly familiar, a cadence she couldn't place. It wasn't Abigail, nor Alistair, nor Finn. It was deeper, resonant, weighted, like the airport itself was speaking. The terminal lights began to dim one by one, in rhythm with the static. Each flicker came with a new distortion, a melody of whispers that overlapped and fragmented. Her name stretched, repeated, reversed. Amy, Ma. She pressed her palms against her ears, but the sound was inside her skull now. It wasn't loud, it was everywhere. It vibrated in her bones, humming beneath her heartbeat. The world began to smear. Edges blurred, corners softened. The runway lights outside turned into long streaks of color, blue, red, gold, then folded inward, swirling like liquid glass. She stumbled back, knocking over a signboard. It didn't fall. It hung mid-air, suspended like the rain outside. She realized, dimly, that gravity had stopped working correctly. Her body felt heavy and light at once. Each breath took a second too long to return. The static pulsed with her heartbeat, or maybe her heartbeat had started following the static. Stay still. That was Finn's voice. It came from behind her, no, from inside her memory. She spun, but the space twisted with her. The terminal elongated, stretching like melted taffy, the far wall receding into an impossible distance. You're between signals now, Finn's voice said again, fragmented by static. Don't answer it. Don't think your name. She tried not to. But thought is not silence. The moment she tried not to think of her name, it echoed louder. Emma. 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 The frequency sharpened. She felt a ringing behind her eyes, a pressure building, as though her skull was trying to resonate. The floor beneath her shoes began to ripple, the tiles bending like a sheet of water. Her reflection in the window smiled. The real Emma did not. The reflection lifted its hand, palm out, pressing against the glass. The same static flickered across its surface, warping the features, stretching the grin too wide. Behind it, in the reflection's world, the terminal was alive, the ceiling lights moved like eyes, the benches like ribs shifting under skin. The reflection mouthed something. At first she thought it was "help me." Then she realized it wasn't a plea, it was an invitation. Come through. The glass shuddered. Lines of light crawled across it like veins. Her reflection's eyes darkened until they were endless voids. The hum intensified. Emma's knees buckled. She pressed her palms to her temples, but the static burned through her skull. Come through. The world inverted. Every sound reversed. The hum became a vacuum, the color drained from the air, her breath came out as light instead of vapor. She saw her own voice, a silver ribbon curling from her mouth, being pulled toward the window. Her reflection caught it. Pulled it tight like a thread. Then yanked. Painless, but total. A sensation of displacement, as if her consciousness was dragged 3 feet to the left of her body. She stumbled, or thought she did, hard to tell what counted as movement when the ground and sky were the same thing. Don't fight it. That voice again. But now it came from nowhere, not even her mind. It was inherent, like the sound gravity would make if it could speak. Shapes coalesced in the static, silhouettes walking backward, talking in reverse, looping endlessly around the check-in counters. One wore a flight attendant uniform, another carried a child that flickered like an old film reel. Each time they passed, their mouths opened in perfect unison. We never left. Her body convulsed. She tried to scream, but the air only turned into light again. Her hands were translucent, inside them, veins glowed like circuitry. The world was becoming signal. And in the center of that chaos, in the intersection of every hum, every whisper, every impossible geometry, stood the black plane. Its surface was not metal but absence. The kind of darkness that erased perspective. It hovered just beyond the glass, wings trembling like a mirage. The door was open. A staircase descended into nothing. She felt the pull, not of curiosity, but inevitability. Every instinct screamed no. But the static had rewritten instinct. It became gravity, and she was falling toward it without moving. Finn, she tried to shout. It came out as a burst of static. Her reflection nodded, or maybe its version of Emma did, and whispered one last time. Once you step through, you can't return to silence. Then everything broke. The glass shattered without sound, raining fragments that hung in the air like stars. The static swelled into a chorus, thousands of voices, all versions of her, speaking at once, overlapping into pure tone. She stepped forward, or was pushed, into the black. The last thing she felt wasn't fear, or pain, or gravity. It was recognition. The frequency wasn't calling her. It was her. Segment 3, the collapse of light. She expected darkness. Instead, she found everything. Color without form. Sound without source. Time without sequence. The black plane dissolved around her, and Emma hung in something that was not space, an ocean of flickering fragments, where each pulse was a memory half-remembered. Faces. Voices. The smell of jet fuel and rain. The sound of a child laughing through static. All of it rose and fell in waves, patterns she almost recognized before they broke apart again. You've been here before. The thought was not hers, yet it formed in her voice. The words rippled outward, splitting into hundreds of echoes that came back as questions. Before, here. Been here, before. Each repetition lost shape, melting into a chorus of half-selves. She felt them brushing against her mind, versions of Emma, scattered like radio transmissions, each trapped on a different frequency. Her body didn't exist anymore, but she could remember it, fingers twitching, lungs aching, the weight of gravity pressing down. She tried to move, and the thought itself made the space rearrange. A corridor of light unfolded before her, lined with doors that weren't doors, but possibilities, every choice she had ever made refracted infinitely. She stepped, or imagined she did, into the nearest one. A flash. She was back at Heathrow. The crowd roared at a delayed flight, cameras flashing. But every face in the terminal was hers. Rows and rows of Emmas shouting complaints at the check-in desk. One hurled a suitcase, another wept into her phone. Their voices overlapped until it became static again. Stop, she whispered. The crowd froze mid-gesture. 1,000 heads turned to look at her at once. Which one are you? The question cut through everything. Her surroundings shattered like glass, and she was falling again, not down, but inward. The sense of self peeled away layer by layer. First her job title, then her face, then her memories of London, each fragment disintegrated into data, carried off by unseen currents. She landed, softly, on what might have been a runway. Only now, the sky was below her feet, and above was a vast ocean of black clouds, lit from within by shifting constellations. The air shimmered with a low vibration that felt like thought itself. In the distance, a tower rose from the horizon. Its surface flickered like a dying screen. Drawn to it, she walked, or rather, the thought of walking carried her closer. Each step made the world rewrite itself, tiles became fog, fog became reflection, reflection became memory. The closer she came to the tower, the more she realized it wasn't a structure at all. It was her own image, stretched upward, endless, built from every reflection she'd ever glimpsed. And at its base stood Abigail. Still dressed in her 1940s coat, her smile now calm, almost human. "Welcome to the quiet side," Abigail said. Her voice was layered, harmonized with the static hum surrounding them. "You crossed the threshold, Emma." "Most don't." Emma tried to speak, but her words broke apart mid-air, scattering like dust motes. Abigail tilted her head. "Don't strain yourself. Language doesn't hold here. You're beyond definition." Emma forced the thought instead, "What is this place?" Abigail smiled faintly. "It's not a place. It's the pause between transmissions. The moment before a signal decides what it wants to be." The clouds above them began to pulse, forming immense circular ripples that expanded outward. Each pulse left trails of symbols, flight codes, timestamps, names, looping endlessly into the sky. Emma felt a terrible clarity bloom in her chest. Blackthorn isn't an airport, she thought. It's a relay. Abigail nodded once. Exactly. It connects what you call real to what refuses to stay silent. Every keeper holds the signal steady. Until it changes them. She stepped closer, eyes gleaming with pale light. "Tell me, Emma, did you ever wonder why the salary was so high?" Emma didn't need to answer. The truth was already forming between them, visible as threads of luminous static connecting their thoughts. Payment wasn't for labor. It was for containment. A low rumble rolled across the horizon. The tower, her own towering reflection, began to distort, its surface rippling like disturbed water. From its base, cracks of white light spread outward, fracturing the ground beneath them. Abigail's image wavered. "It's waking up," she said quietly. "You've been recognized." The light grew, blinding, expanding in every direction until the world itself began to fold. Emma reached toward Abigail, but her hand passed through, dissolving into photons. The hum rose into a deafening resonance, and within it she could hear everything: Alistair's weary sigh, Finn's warnings, the roar of the plane, the chorus of her other selves, all collapsing into one unified tone. "You are the frequency." She saw the truth then, not with eyes, but with awareness. Blackthorn was not built on haunted ground, it was the wound between worlds, and every soul drawn to it was another frequency trying to stabilize the signal. Emma felt herself stretch across that wound. She was the hum, the static, the silence before the noise. Her consciousness elongated until it spanned the tower, the sky, the field of frozen rain. And then, a whisper, faint but clear, cut through the resonance. "Emma, do you copy?" A voice she knew, Finn's. It came through the static like a lifeline. She tried to answer, but her words created ripples that distorted the fabric around her. "Emma, hold position. You're bleeding through the channel." Bleeding. Through. The world convulsed. The tower shattered into dust, scattering like spilled light. The sky inverted again, folding her inside out until she saw herself standing at the terminal counter, just for an instant, before everything imploded into pure white. Silence. Then, slowly, sound returned, the hum of fluorescent lights, the tick of a clock. The smell of coffee and floor wax. Emma opened her eyes. She was sitting in the terminal. Morning sunlight filtered through the windows. Everything looked normal. The sign behind her read, "Welcome to Blackthorn Regional Airport." But the letters shimmered slightly, bending in rhythm with an unseen pulse. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled. "Blackthorn Tower to night operator, do you copy?" Emma smiled faintly, though she wasn't sure why. The sound of static hummed softly in her ears, like a heartbeat she could no longer separate from her own. She reached into her pocket. The laminated paper of the 6 rules was still there, but rule number 1 had changed. Rule 1, keep the frequency alive. She looked out the window. Far beyond the runway, through the morning fog, she thought she saw the faint shimmer of a black plane waiting at the horizon. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Part 4, Segment 1, The Keeper's Dawn. Morning light filtered through the windows like water through ice. For a long time, Emma didn't move. The terminal was quiet, too quiet, the kind of stillness that happens before sound remembers to exist. The digital clock above the counter blinked 7 o'clock, but each second ticked unevenly, like a metronome unsure of its rhythm. She rubbed her eyes. Her reflection in the glass was pale, drained, but otherwise, human. Mostly. The intercom crackled softly. Morning shift reporting in. Finn's voice. Calm, steady, normal. Except, she couldn't see him anywhere. Finn, she called, her voice echoing through the empty space. No reply. Only static. Then, faintly, his voice again. You made it through. The words came wrapped in interference, warped at the edges. Emma stood slowly, her legs trembling with that dreamlike uncertainty that separates sleep from waking. She walked toward the staff corridor. The air smelled of ozone and something faintly metallic, like rain that had fallen through power lines. Every light was on. Every shadow seemed to breathe. At the end of the corridor, she found Alistair's office door slightly open. Inside, the desk was empty except for a cup of cold tea and a thick leather notebook left open to a page scrawled in neat, angular handwriting. Every keeper thinks they are the first to make it back. Below it, another line. Every keeper learns they never did. Her stomach tightened. She turned the page. Beneath the handwritten rules, the same 6 she had received on her first night, new words had appeared, written in her own looping script, though she didn't remember writing them. Rule 7, when you start to hear the silence answer back, it's already begun. A pulse rolled through the room, low, resonant, like the airport itself had exhaled. The fluorescent lights flickered once. When they steadied, the window behind the desk showed the runway outside. Except it wasn't a runway anymore. It was a sea of mist, stretching infinitely, threaded with faint, moving lights that blinked like distant beacons. Shapes moved beneath it, silhouettes that might have been planes or thoughts or memories. Emma felt a strange calm. This was no longer fear. It was recognition, a sense that everything terrible she had endured had only been a misunderstanding of scale. The intercom hummed again. Blackthorn Tower tonight operator, do you copy? She pressed the button. Copy, she said. Her voice echoed back, not from the speaker, but from everywhere. It filled the air like feedback, looping once, then fading into a harmonic hum. Good. The frequency's stable again. Finn's tone had changed, distant, layered, as though multiple versions of him were speaking at once. Where are you? Emma asked. Where we all are. Between transmissions. His words were followed by a soft click, and silence. The static in the air softened into rhythm, and she realized, with detached clarity, that it matched her heartbeat. When she stepped out into the terminal again, the sunlight was gone. The windows showed only fog, dense and luminous. The world beyond had faded to abstraction, a suggestion more than a place. She walked to the counter, sat down, and stared at the clock. It still read 7 o'clock. It hadn't moved at all. For a moment, she thought she should feel panic. But all she felt was understanding. Time here didn't progress, it oscillated. Every second was both arriving and leaving, eternally returning to itself. She whispered into the still air, "How long have I been here?" The answer came in her own voice, through the intercom, through the static, through the hum of the lights. "As long as it takes to forget you ever weren't." She smiled faintly. "I see." In the corner of the terminal, the security monitor flickered to life, showing multiple feeds of the same empty building. In each feed, she was visible, sitting at the counter, standing by the door, walking down the hall, all at once. Each version of her moved in perfect rhythm, like synchronized echoes. The speakers hummed. The sound deepened into that familiar, resonant tone, not frightening now, but whole, like a song remembering its melody. Emma took a deep breath, reached for the laminated rules on the desk, and smoothed the paper flat. The words shimmered, reordering themselves as she looked. Blackthorn Regional Airport, Night Operations Protocol. Keep the frequency alive. Never let silence persist. Remember that observation creates the boundary. When the boundary fails, become the signal. The signal endures. The keeper endures. She looked up. The fog outside pulsed once, as if in response. For a moment, she thought she saw shapes moving within it, outlines of people, travelers perhaps, drifting toward the terminal's faint glow. Emma turned on the lights, every one of them, until the building was bathed in sterile brightness. Then she sat down, headset in place, and pressed the transmitter key. Blackthorn Tower, she said softly, her voice steady, night operator on duty. Frequency is live. The static responded, rising in perfect harmony, a sound both infinite and intimate, the hum of everything that has ever tried to return. Emma smiled. For the first time, she understood that this was not a curse. It was continuity. And as the fog outside rippled with faint luminescence, the black plane shimmered into view once more, waiting, patient, eternal, its engines whispering a language she now fully understood. She leaned forward, spoke gently into the mic, and said, "Blackthorn acknowledges receipt." The static swelled. The lights dimmed. And the hum continued, endless, unbroken, alive. Segment 2, The Echo Protocol. They said the tower went dark on June 14, 2027. For 3 nights after, the Aviation Authority logged the same anomaly. A single repeating tone at 19.7 kHz, below audibility for most humans, but strong enough to rattle instrument panels across a 100-mile radius. By the 4th night, the tone vanished. Blackthorn Regional Airport was declared decommissioned, its staff reassigned, its records archived under routine closure procedures. The official report listed environmental instability and equipment degradation as causes. But the recordings told another story. Somewhere in the deep archives of civil aviation storage, inside a sealed case labeled Emergency Frequency Logs, BTA 34, a cassette remained. It was discovered 2 years later during an audit, no metadata, no timestamp, just one note written on the sleeve. Do not digitize. When played, it began with silence. Then, faintly, the hum. At first, it was indistinguishable from interference, a slow, undulating signal that rose and fell like breathing. Then came the voice. Female. Calm. Distant, as if speaking through deep water. Blackthorn Tower. Night operator on duty. Frequency is live. The archivist who logged the tape stopped midway through and never finished the transcript. The rest of the document is written in fragments, scattered between reports and private memos. From the fragments, a pattern emerges. The signal reappeared in multiple cities at 3 o'clock local time. The message content was identical in every instance. Each occurrence coincided with unexplained interference in emergency and civilian bands. Attempted triangulation yielded coordinates that led nowhere. And in the margins, one last annotation, written in the archivist's hand before their resignation. It doesn't come from above or below. It comes from the space between transmissions, from where silence folds back on itself. Years later, a small group of amateur radio enthusiasts in the Baltic Coast region began picking up the same frequency again. They called it the Blackthorn signal. At first, they treated it like an urban legend. They swapped recordings online, mapped reception points, built makeshift antennae to chase the signal's drifting locus. But soon, they noticed patterns, subtle modulations in the noise that, when visualized spectrographically, formed repeating symbols. Letters. Names. Then, one night, a voice broke through the static for the first time in decades. Do you read me? The fog is moving again. And then, softly. We are still here. For a moment, every receiver went silent. Then, all across the world, radios, scanners, even baby monitors hummed with the same tone. Low, rhythmic, constant. It lasted exactly 7 minutes. Afterward, one of the operators claimed he'd heard something else underneath the hum, a whisper almost too faint to notice, repeating over and over. Keep the frequency alive. Today, Blackthorn Tower is nothing but a skeleton. The runway has cracked open with moss and creeping roots. Wind howls through its hollow corridors, carrying fragments of static like the ghosts of forgotten transmissions. But on certain nights, always in June, the control panel lights up again, power drawn from no visible source. And if you listen closely, just before dawn, you might hear it. A woman's voice, calm and steady, cutting through the noise. Blackthorn Tower. Night operator on duty. Frequency is live. Then the hum fades. And the world continues, none the wiser. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of airwaves, a figure sits in a glowing fog, headset on, eyes open, listening to the pulse of eternity. She no longer waits for answers. She is the answer. A soft smile forms on her lips as she adjusts the dial, ensuring the signal never falters. And across 1,000 sleeping cities, 1,000 lights flicker once in synchrony, the faintest acknowledgement. Like the universe blinking back. The frequency endures. The keeper endures. The transmission continues.